I'm going to read with my bear buddies tonight. I think that'll be nice. Nice. I hope you guys enjoy the stories. Let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, tonight we are reading our book that's in the public domain. It is Stories for Bedtime. This is Fabulous Nuts ASMR, and my name is Paige. Sit back, get a few of your buddies, snuggle up, and let's see what this Stories for Bedtime has to offer us. And it's by Abbie Phillips Walker. It was published by Harper's and Brothers Publishing. It was published May 22nd, 1917. These are older, lesser-known stories. See if you happen to know any. Let's get going. We'll start with, we're going to read about an hour's worth, okay? And we'll come back and finish this book. This is called Sandman's Tales. It's the title of the book. How the Fairies Borrowed the Moon. I don't suppose that everybody knows why it is that sometimes when you look up at the sky at night, you see only part of the moon, and perhaps nobody would ever have known if the goblins had not spied on the fairies' festival one night and found it out and told it. The fairies had for a long time had a festival in the spring and summer and in the fall, but they never, ever had a winter festival, although one would have thought that the white snow would have made an especially pretty setting for one of their dances. But one night at a gathering of the fairies, it was proposed to hold a winter festival, and after it had been talked over, every little fairy there was enthusiastically planning what to do. Finally, one of the fairies said, I think it would be nicest to have the festival on the lake, and then we will have the smooth ice to dance on. And another fairy said, we can build a fire over on the side of the lake so we can warm ourselves if we get cold. And another said, those who do not wish to dance can skate by their wands on the bottom of their shoes. The gnomes said they would look after the polishing of the ice by going to Jack Frost and getting him to help them, and they planned to ask the north wind to blow and send some clean white snow, and every fairy was to have her dress trimmed with fur, and each was to wear a little bonnet made of swan's down and tied with a red ribbon. Another of the festival was planned to be one of the most elaborate the fairies had ever given. But just as the meeting was breaking up, one of the fairies said, what are we going to do for light? In the summer, we have always had fireflies to help us. But now they're all fast asleep, and we cannot wake them up. And anyway, their lights are all out at this time of year. Why, we have the moon, said one of the fairies. Yes, said another, but while the moon is bright enough for us on ordinary nights, we certainly need more light than she will give for so great a festival as we're going to have. That's so, said the first fairy, but I do not see how we can get any brighter. The moon would be all right if it was only nearer, so that its light would shine better, said another fairy. After thinking a moment, she said, I wonder if we can borrow the moon. Borrow the moon, cried a half dozen fairies in chorus. Why, what would people think? Well, said the fairy, if we couldn't borrow the whole of it, perhaps we could borrow a piece of it. And then, if we left the rest, it would shine in the sky. Perhaps the people wouldn't notice. That's not such a bad idea, said the Queen of the Fairies, and I will appoint the committee to try to arrange it. So she named 3 of the fairies to act as the committee to borrow the moon. The day before the festival was to take place, 3 fairies all got astride a broomstick, which a witch loaned them, and sailed away up into the sky. And when the man in the moon saw them coming towards him, he was very much surprised, and was more surprised when he heard the curious request that they had to make. Well, I'll lend you the moon, he said. Why, what a strange thing to ask me. What do you think all the people down on the earth would say if they found out that I had done such an unheard of thing? They might even make me move out of the moon and go somewhere else. I've lived here so long that I would never be happy anywhere else. But, said the fairies, if we do not have some light, our festival will be a failure. And this is the first winter festival we have ever had. And Jack Frost has been just splendid in helping us, and we think you might help too. If you won't loan us the whole of the moon, couldn't you loan us a part of it? We'll be sure to bring it back in just as good a condition as when we took it. How big of a piece would you want? Asked the man. Just as big as you can spare, said the fairies. Well, he said after thinking for a minute, you've come a long way, and I would like to help you, and certainly want your festival to be a success. So I'm going to let you take a piece off the edge, but so as to be sure that you return it, I'm going to make one of your fairies stay here all the time the piece is gone, and when it is returned, the fairy can go home. So the fairies drew as to which one should stay, and the man took a big saw and sawed off a piece of the moon right near the edge where the people would least likely to notice it was gone. And the 2 fairies took it with them on the broomstick back to earth. And such a festival as the first winter festival was. Everybody voted it the best they'd ever had, and all agreed that the piece of the moon which they had borrowed gave the finest of lights. After the festival was over, the 2 fairies took it back to the sky and returned with their sister, who had stayed there while they were away. The man in the moon was so pleased with the visit of the fairies that he told them they could borrow part of the moon any time they liked. So, when you look up at the sky and only see part of the moon, why, perhaps the fairies are holding another festival and have borrowed another piece of the moon. Welcome on in, everybody. I hope with the new microphone, it's a little bit better to hear. Give me a thumbs up if you're able to hear it a little better for me. Thank you all so much. I see Simon Rose Plays. I see Paul. I see After Dark 12:15. I saw Patrick jump on in. I can't really reach the scrolling. When we get to the end of our reading tonight, I will be sure to go back and we'll have some time to chat. Let's go on. The next story is called The Green and Red Rooster. Farmer Jones wanted a weather vane, and when a peddler came along, he bought a green and red tin rooster and put it on the shed where he always kept his hay. One morning, Miss Hennypenny was scratching around for worms when she happened to look up at the top of the shed. She dropped the big worm she had found, and Speckled Hen picked it up and ran. But Hennypenny didn't notice her, for she was standing with her mouth wide open, staring at the green and red rooster on top of the shed. "Isn't he handsome?" she said, and clucked and scratched, but the rooster on the shed did not lower his lofty head. Hennypenny was a trim-looking little brown hen, around whose necks were a few white feathers, which looked like a linen collar. She might have been called a tailor-made hen, so prim she did look. Hennypenny walked up and down in front of the shed, and every now and then she would cast a shy glance at the green and red rooster. He swung around a little, but never a glance did he give her. Hennypenny flew up the fence and flapped her wings. Then she walked up and down. She thought he would surely notice her there and crow, if nothing more. "Oh dear," she sighed, "if only he would crow. I am sure he has a lovely voice." Still, the rooster did not notice her. "The woodpile is higher," she thought. "I'll try that." So she flew to the top of the highest pile of wood. She walked about, flapping her wings, but the green and red rooster did not lower his gaze. He has the most beautiful comb I have ever saw," said Hennypenny, more anxious than ever to attract his attention. A thunderstorm came up, and Hennypenny ran under the bush, but she made a peephole through which she could watch her sweetheart. "He will fly down now," thought Hennypenny. The thunder rolled, the lightning flashed around him, but aside from moving back and forth, he did not stir from the end of the shed. "Oh, isn't he brave?" thought Hennypenny. When the shower was over, she looked at him again. "How lovely his feathers look after the rain," she said. "So smooth, and how they shine. Any other rooster would look ruffled." And then she walked into the shed. "Just to think," she sighed, looking at the roof, "he is just beyond those rafters." Suddenly she flew up to the shelf on the side of the shed. And from there she flew to the hayloft, and after resting a while, up she flew to the rafters. She sat resting there, looking out of the window that was broken just above her head. If she could get out of that, she could reach her idol. She spread her wings, and swoosh, she was out on the roof. Hennypenny held her head down and scratched the roof with her toes. She gave a sidelong glance at her idol, but his head was high. She grew bolder and walked to the end of the roof, but she stepped back, her wings half spread. Her eyes looked as though they would pop out a little from her head. "What?" she screamed. "My idol is 10. Not only his feet, but all of his beautiful green and red feathers are 10. Poor Henny Penny. She did not stop to go back the way she came. She went to the edge of the roof, spread her wings, and swish, thump, she was on the ground again. All the hens and roosters rushed to where she had landed, their necks outstretched, making a great deal of noise. The pigs squealed and the dogs barked. Henny Penny jumped up and shook her feathers. "My goodness," said the old gray hen. "Whatever are you doing on top of the shed? Do you want to break your legs?" "I wanted to see the view from up there," said Henny Penny, turning her head to hide her blushes. "I think she went up to visit the weathercock," said the white rooster, who more than once had tried to be friends with Henny Penny. "You'd better be satisfied with us live roosters," he continued, "and not fly so high." Henny Penny walked away with her head held very high, but her heart was sad. "Anyway," she said to herself, "he is handsome, and if he were alive, he'd very likely would love me." How the Mice Caught the Pussycat. "It is very queer to me," said Gray Mouse to his brother's Whiskers, "that Pussy lets us run all around this pantry and never so much as tries to catch us." "I suppose she thinks that there are traps enough around here to do that," said Whiskers. "There is one on the shelf and one on the floor and one on the back of the barrel and one in the closet under the shelf, but of course we do not mind those. We've seen too many to be caught by a mere trap." "Yes, that is the very thing that makes me think it is queer that Pussy does not do her duty and try to catch us," replied Gray Mouse. "I'm going to watch," he continued, "and find out if I can why she lets us run around here. Here she comes now. Run behind that dish. I'll get into this basket of eggs. Now keep your eyes open." The little cat walked into the pantry with slow steps, sniffed the air, and looked about. Then she rubbed against some paper bags on the floor, and one mouse, who was behind the box, ran into its hole, but the little cat pretended not to notice him. She walked over to the shelf where a bowl of cream sat and jumped up. Then she waited a minute as if listening, but no one came, and the little cat put her head into the bowl and did not remove it until half of the cream was gone. Then she gently tiptoed over the bowl, and the rest of the cream ran over the shelf. The little cat then helped herself to a piece of meat that was on a plate and jumped down. Whiskers came out from his hiding place when she was gone and ran over to the basket of eggs where Gray Mouse was hiding. "She ate the cream and took a piece of meat. Didn't her do that lots before?" he said. "Go back and keep quiet," replied his brother. "I think we shall learn her secret if we wait long enough." Gray Mouse had just enough time to hide as the door opened. Just then the maid came in. Goodness me, she exclaimed when she saw the overturned bowl. Those mice are so thick about here that they tip things over as well as eat everything in sight. They even carried off that piece of meat I left from breakfast. I have to get some more traps. Poor little kitty can't catch all of them. What did I tell you? Said Whiskers when the maid had left. That sly little cat lets us run about here, so we will get blamed for everything it has eaten and all that happens in the pantry, while all the time she's getting all the cream she wants and other things too. Now they will put a new lot of traps in here and no knowing what terrible death awaits us. I wish we could do something to pay her back. I do not see that we are any worse off than if she were trying to catch us all the time, said Gray Mouse. It's either the little cat or new traps. Yes, that's true, but we know enough about the old traps and can keep away from them. And all we have to do with the kitty is not to run about when she's in the house. If she did not eat the cream and other things for which we have no taste at all, the little we eat would never be noticed. As it is, she is playing on us, and she gets all she wants to eat at our expense. One day, not long after the little cat came into the pantry and looked about, a bowl of warm milk had been put by the window a few minutes before, and near it was a dish of soap. The little cat jumped up and helped herself, and by the time she had finished the soup, she was sleepy. So without going out of the pantry, she stretched herself out on the floor and soon fell fast asleep. Gray Mouse and Whiskers were running about a few minutes after and suddenly came across the sleeping little cat. Now's our chance, whispered Whiskers to Gray Mouse. You see that trap right beside her tail? Yes, I see the trap, but what can we do with the trap? She could not get her paw into it, let alone her head. We don't need her head, foolish fellow, said Whiskers. All we need is her tail. Gray Mouse watched his brother, not having the least notion of what he intended to do with the sleeping little cat. Oh, he spoke as he saw Whiskers go up to the little cat and reach for the end of his tail. Thank you. This frightened Whiskers so that he ran behind the barrel until he was sure the little cat did not awaken. If you can't keep quiet, you'd better go home, he said in an angry whisper. Gray Mouse did not answer his brother, but he kept a safe distance from the little cat and watched Whiskers. This time, Whiskers took the end of the little cat's tail and poked it into the trap. It was all done in a second. Snap went the trap. Whiskers ran, and the little cat jumped, and the little cat began to meow as well as jump, for fast on the end of her tail she carried the trap. Whiskers and Gray Mouse rolled over with laughter to see the little cat trying to rid herself of the trap, but it was of no use, and she went into the kitchen, the trap banging after her as she went. How was she freed from the trap? Whisker asked his brother. Whisker and his brother never knew, but they did know that the little cat was very careful not to swing her tail about as she walked for the next few days. And they heard the maid say to her, "If you had done your duty, Mistress Little Cat, instead of stealing the cream, you would have gotten gone to sleep in the pantry and been caught. And you would not have gone to sleep and been caught. It serves you right. Thank you guys for coming in for story time. It's going to be going on every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be here reading something. I hope you can hear me better. I went ahead and bought a microphone, and it's my first time using it. So put a thumbs up for me in the chat if you can hear okay. If not, I can speak a little bit louder. All right, we're going on to our next story of the night. Another cat story. I haven't read any of these books. So this book is called The Sandman, and it's from 1917. All righty. So here we go. The Green Cat. Old Witch Beto stood in the door of her cave on top of a high mountain. Her lean, long arms were stretched before her, and the wind blew wisps of her graying hair, making them look like many horns around her wicked face. Old Witch Beto was very angry. The people of the village were given a fete to which she had not been invited. But who would have thought of inviting old Beto to anything? Her appearance in the village was always an ill omen. Someone lost a cow, or the water in the wells turned green and unfit to drink, or worse still, the children upon whom she cast her evil eye became deformed. But old Witch Beto did not think of all this, and in her cave on top of the mountain, she was calling down the rain to spoil their party. Such rain had never been seen before. The valley was like a river, and all the pretty decorations which had been put up for the party were spoiled, and the young people were bemoaning the lost pleasures. Hans and Gretchen were to be married during the party, and Gretchen's pretty eyes were red with weeping, for the new cap and embroidered petticoat would be spoiled if she wore them, and to be married in one's old clothes was something people would never forget. So Hans was unhappy because his pretty Gretchen would not smile. "Dry your eyes, little Gretchen," he said, and kissed her goodnight. "I'll make the sun shine tomorrow if I have to climb to the top of the mountain and pull his old head out of the clouds." Hans had not the least notion of doing it, but he could not leave his pretty sweetheart without some words of comfort. He had not walked far before he heard something splashing beside him. "Some poor dog," thought Hans, "is trying to find his way home," and he swung his lantern around. But instead of finding a dog, he saw a huge frog. "You're having wet weather," said the frog. Hans was too surprised, and the frog spoke again. "Would you like to know how to stop the rain?" he asked. By this time, Hans had recovered from his surprise. "Yes," he replied, "but how can it be done?" "If you have the courage to climb to the top of the mountain," said the frog, "and find old Witch Beto, you can do it. She is angry because you did not invite her to your party and is sending the rain into the valley." "I'm afraid she won't listen to me," said Hans. "No," replied the frog, "but you can force her to stop the rain by finding the green cat." "I never saw a green cat or heard of one either," said Hans. "Where can such a cat be found?" That is the most difficult part, said the frog. For you, you will have to first find the dwarf who is guarding it. The green cat is the only thing in the world of which the old witch is afraid. Where does the dwarf live? Asked Hans. And why does he guard the green cat? I will tell you, said the frog. The dwarf is old Beddo's son, who lives in the forest on the other side of the mountain, and in his caves he has the green cat, and it is guarded night and day by thousands of insects which fly at and sting anyone who comes near the cave. Hans thought of Gretchen's tears, and he said, I will try, and if I fail, no one will be harmed but me. But if I succeed, everybody in the valley will be happy. So he thanked the frog and turned towards the side of the mountain where the dwarf lived. Put me in your pocket, said the frog. I may be of help to you. Hans picked him up and put him in his pocket. It was a long way up the mountain to the cave of the dwarf, and Hans sat down on a rock to rest when he came to the edge of the forest. For he had expected to have a hard time getting to the green cat, which the frog told him was inside the cave. It was wet and dark, and he had to carry a torch all the way. But now the frog told him he must extinguish it, or the dwarf and the insects would see him. The cave is only for a short distance away, said the frog, and there's always a fire burning near it at night. When you're in front of the cave, put me on the ground. Hans walked along very cautiously, and presently he saw the fire. And in the doorway of the cave sat thank you, Stinkbug, said the dwarf. Hans carefully put the frog on the ground and went nearer. The dwarf did not see him until he was right in front of him. He jumped up and gave a particular whistle, and instantly there arose what Hans thought at first was thick smoke, but he soon found that it was all kinds of insects. There were so many that they did look like smoke. The frog, by this time, had leaped in front of the dwarf, who drew back as if he had been struck by a blow. It is too late, said the frog. Call back the insects. When the frog told the dwarf to call back the insects, he gave the same peculiar whistle he had given when he first saw Hans. The green cat is in the cave, said the frog. Hans went in and soon came out with the cat under his arm. Her fur was green, and so were her eyes. In fact, she looked as if she might have been dipped into a paint pot. The dwarf begged them not to take the green cat. I will do anything you ask if you will not take the cat away. You are lucky to escape without being punished, said the frog. Go into your cave, or I may change my mind. The dwarf hurried into his cave when he heard this, and the frog told Hans to put him in his pocket again and hurry to old Beddo's cave on the other side of the mountain. Hans carried the cat under his arm and hurried towards the other side of the mountain as the frog had told him. When they reached there, the rain had ceased, and old Beddo sat in front of her cave asleep. Hans put the cat on the ground. When she saw old Beddo, she ran to her and made a queer sounding meow. Old Witch Beddo opened her eyes and looked for fear came over her wicked old face. She got up and tried to get away, but that green cat ran in front of her. We are face to face at daybreak, said the cat, and I changed to my natural form. She finished speaking, and a young girl stood in place of the green cat. And now you shall give my lover his natural form also, said the girl. Old Beddo was trembling so that she could hardly hold the cane which held over the frog, mumbling as she did so. In the place where the frog had been a moment before sat a young gentleman. He took the hand of the girl and held it to his lips. Hans had been so very busy watching the lovers that he did not notice Old Beddo was sneaking into the rock against which she was leaning. When he looked around, she had entirely disappeared, and only the big stone remained. The sun was just coming up over the mountain when Hans and his new friends started for the valley. The young gentleman told Hans his story as he walked down the mountain. I am a prince, he said, and this lady is a princess whom I was to marry. But on the night of our wedding, Old Beddo enticed her to the cave by telling her she would give her charm that would ensure happiness for the rest of her life. When the princess reached the cave, Old Beddo tried to get her to marry her son, the dwarf, who had seen the princess at some time and fallen in love with her. When the princess refused to marry the dwarf, Old Beddo changed her into a green cat and gave her to the dwarf to guard, saying, "You will never resume your natural form until we are face to face at daybreak." And she was so sure that the dwarf would not let the green cat escape that she added, "And when that happens, I will turn to rock." I found out the princess had gone to Old Beddo's cave, and when I went to ask what had become of the princess, she was frightened and changed me into a frog. So I could not return to my home for help. If you want your bride, she said, climb to the other side of the mountain. And she dropped me into the valley. Of course, I could not climb a mountain in the form of a frog, but when I met you on the side of the road, I felt sure you could help me. I am helping you, said Hans. I have brought happiness to many others, for the rain has stopped falling and the party can go on, and Gretchen and I will be married today. I cannot thank you enough. The prince told Hans that he was the one to be thankful, for without him he could not have reached the princess. The princess and the prince went on their way, and Hans said goodbye and hurried to Gretchen's cottage, where he found her all smiles and dressed in her new cap and embroidered petticoat for the wedding. Did you really pull his head out of the clouds? She asked, pointing to the sun. Hans laughed and said, I told you he should shine for you, and if I had to climb to the top of the mountain, your smile would have been ample reward. He did not tell Gretchen about Old Beddo or the green cat, but years afterwards, when they were little boys and girls playing at their door, Hans used to tell them the story of the green cat that was guarded by the dwarf who lived on the other side of the mountain that was in front of their home. Thank you all for being with me. I hope the microphone is helping. Can somebody in the chat let me know? And I'm so glad some of you are enjoying the reading. I love it. It's nighttime stories and just some good old fun, right? We are reading the book of fairy tales called The Sandman Tales from 1917. It's a public domain book. All right. We have a little more time, so let's read another one. The story is called The Thief of the Fairy's Wand. The goblins and the gnomes were jealous of the fairies, and one night they decided to steal their wands. They knew, of course, that it would be very hard to do so, for the fairies were always awake at night. So they arranged for a plan to frighten them, thinking that they would drop their wands and they could pick them up and run. The fairies lived in a mossy valley where there was a river, and the goblins and gnomes hid in the river, just their eyes above the water, so that the goblins looked like so many frogs, and the gnomes like brown leaves floating around. "Now we must wait," said the goblin, "until the fairies are in sight. They will have to pass this river to get out of the valley, and then we can jump and splash the water so that it will fall in their faces. They do not like to be wet. They will drop their wands and cover their faces with their hands. The rest will be easy." By and by, the fairies began to appear, and when they were all together, the queen drove along, and they started out of the valley. When they reached the river, the goblins and gnomes jumped and screamed and splashed the water over the poor little fairies, who dropped their wands, covered their faces, and ran. Out of the water hopped the goblins and gnomes and picked up their wands and ran into the woods. By the time the fairies had dried their eyes all they could see, the goblins and gnomes were out of sight. "What shall we do?" cried the fairies. "They've taken our wands. We're powerless, and no one knows what harm those wicked creatures may do with them." But the queen quieted them by holding up her wand. It had dropped in the bottom of her carriage. When she let it fall, it was not noticed by the goblins and the gnomes. "Do not worry," she told them. "They will very soon be begging you to come get your wands, for I intend to make them very uncomfortable." "Wait here," she told the fairies, and away she drove in the direction of the goblins and the gnomes. The goblins and the gnomes had gone into the woods, and as soon as they found a clear space, they stopped running. "Now," they said, "we will transform everything here and make a place worth having." One of them touched a tree with the wand. There appeared a large house, but the others did not want a house. The goblin turned a rock into a pond, and the gnome said it was one of their doors, and they fell into quarreling and striking one another with the wands, and each one that touched with the wand turned to stone. And then the wands burned the hands of the others, and when they threw them on the ground, they became like serpents of fire and chased them about until those that were not turned into stone were running about in all directions, trying to escape the fiery wands. In the midst of all of this, the fairy queen appeared. And when the goblins and gnomes saw her, they ran to her and begged that she would take away the wands. But she told them if they wished to be rid of them and have their companions changed into their natural forms, they must go to the fairies and beg their pardon and ask them to come for the wands, as each wand was governed by the fairy to whom it belonged. Away ran the goblins and the gnomes. They found the fairies and told them they were very sorry. They had frightened them and splashed water in their faces. They begged them to come take the wands. When the fairies came to where the queen was waiting, The wands lay quietly on the ground. Each fairy picked up her wand. "Will you please touch our companions who've been turned to stone?" said the goblins, and the gnomes asked in a very humble manner. "In the house and the pond also. We don't want anything left to remind us of those dreadful wands." But the queen granted all but one request. "The pond must stay as it is. You will be reminded of your wrongdoing, and if you annoy the fairies again, the water will boil and run over your rocks and sink into the earth and burn you." The goblins and gnomes ran away as fast as they could, promising to never bother the fairies again. So, guys, we have time for one more story out of this book, and we will come back to this book on Tuesday at the same time. Thank you, guys, for reading. I always appreciate you as well, Stinkbug. Thank you so much for being here. Mara K3K, thank you for coming in. Thank you guys for the support. I'm afraid to touch anything in case I mess it up. So let's finish reading the last story and then we'll visit for a bit before you have to go to bed. Okay. Helen's great grandmother. That's funny. My mom's name is Helen and my great grandmother's name was Helen. All right. Helen had a great grandmother who lived with her grandmother. And when Helen went to see her great grandmother, she spent an hour each day at great grandma's great room. One day, while Helen was sitting with her, she asked, "How old are you, Grandma Great?" "I'm 80 years. Not if your heart is young." "And is your heart young?" inquired Helen. "Yes, my heart is young. All these things keep it so," said Grandma Great, pointing to the old-fashioned furniture around the room. Helen looked, her thoughts very plain. She did not understand how all the old furniture could make one feel young. "Then I have many other things," Grandma Great continued, "which you do not see. And when I feel a bit like growing old, I look at them, and I'm young again. Would you like to see them?" Helen's curiosity was really aroused, and she was eager to see what wonderful things could make Grandma Great feel young. Grandma opened the drawer of old-fashioned bureau. There was wonderful boxes. One was called a handkerchief box. It opened in the middle with two little tapes that held it together. The cover opened on either side. Grandma Great took out a little lace collar. It was as fine as a spider web. "This was one of my wedding collars," she told Helen. And then there was the fine linen handkerchief, yellow with age, with the tiniest of flowers embroidered in one corner. There was a chain made of hair with a little gold clasp, also a ring made of hair with a little gold buckle, which made it look like a tiny little belt. Grandma Great handed her a picture. "See if you can tell who this is." Helen looked and saw a very pretty girl with black curls and pink cheeks. Her eyes were black like her own, and she had a dress made of, oh, so queerly, a flowered material. "I was 18 when that was taken," said Grandma Great. Helen thought she looked like a beautiful wax doll and wondered if Grandma Great was as young and pretty as that, and then she wondered if someday she would be old like Grandma Great. She had never thought of it before. "Here's a picture of your great-grandfather taken when we were married." Helen saw a handsome young man with blue eyes and brown curling hair. He looked very straight. He had on a high collar, and it looked to Helen as though he had yards of black satin around it. There was a fan with a pearl stick, and on the outside sticks was a tiny mirror. She was told that it would be hers one day. Then there was a funny pair of kid gloves, pale pink with little brass hooks. These were my wedding gloves, said Grandma Great, and these were my traveling gloves. Helen thought she had never seen anything so funny as the second pair, which were bright green. There were unusual little ties with tassels and a pair of stockings the color of the pink gloves. They were my wedding stockings, and your grandmother wore them when she was married, said Grandma Great, and I hope they will be yours some day. Helen thought that very odd. She didn't want to wear old stockings when she was married. There were locks of hair tied with ribbon, pictures of people in weird-looking clothes. Here is a breastpin your great-grandmother gave me with his hair, great-grandfather gave me with his hair in it. That's so Victorian. Helen took it in her hand and looked at it. She thought it was very odd that someone should want to wear a pin like that. There was a watch with a gold face, and on the back of the case was a house and trees. That will also be yours, Grandma Great told her, but Helen didn't think she would ever wear such a big watch. My wedding dress is in that trunk. Would you like to see it? Helen told her she would, for she often wondered what was in the trunk. It was that covered. Oh my, it's beautiful, exclaimed Helen as Grandma Great held up the dress of the palest pink silk with little sprays of green on it. The skirt was very full and long, and the waist looked as though it might fit Helen. Your grandmother wore this dress at her silver wedding, said Grandma Great. I wish you might, but I'm afraid it will not hold together till then. Here is the shawl I also wore, that you will have and can wear, I think. It was the palest pearl color with fringe around it and embroidered with big flowers. And these were my wedding slippers. Your grandmother wore these also when she was married. I hope you may be able to. But Helen thought the same as she did about the stockings. She would want a new ones. Here is something you will like, said Grandma Great, as she handed Helen a box. Helen took off the cover, and there were valentines, yellow with age, but the prettiest she had ever seen. You can amuse yourself looking at them, Grandma Great told her. There were valentines with lace, pretty colored paper, and one was satin and perfumed. But the one that pleased Helen the most was a lace one which had a tiny little mirror in the center with blue paper around it, and under it in gilded letters read, My Sweetheart. Where is the sweetheart? She asked. Grandma Great laughed. Look in the mirror, she told her. Oh, that's so funny, said Helen, and in one corner were little cupids with a banner which read, With fondest love, and in another pair, turtle doves with a banner in their bills which read, Remember me. Here is a packet of letters, said Helen when she came to the bottom of the box, and she handed them to Grandma Great. They had weird-looking stamps on them and were tied with a blue ribbon. Those were written to me by your great-grandfather, said Grandma Great, when he was courting me, or shall I say, before we were married, for he was always my sweetheart. And she pressed the letters to her lips. Helen went on looking at the valentines. When she had finished, she saw Grandma Great had fallen asleep. The letters were in her lap, and she had her sweetheart's picture in one hand. Helen looked at her. There was a smile upon her face, and somehow Helen understood what she had meant by keeping young, and after that day's visit, Helen always felt that Grandma Great was much younger than she had ever thought. That concludes our storytelling for the night. We will start on The Too Ambitious Spider on Tuesday at the same time. Thank you guys for all coming in and supporting. I don't know, my evening whisper reading. Right now I'm doing it, committing to Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, same time, because I go to bed after this. So, you know, what you gonna do? Me and Grandma Great, we go to bed early. So thank you guys for coming over and enjoying some reading with me tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe if you haven't. Check out the membership. And just thanks for your support. Until we meet again, guys. Oh, hold on. The announcements are not finished. Remember, during the day, right after about 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, sometime around there, 12 or 1, I do a 2 to 4 hour meditation moment where we just have a beautiful scene and some light music to play in the background, just as a time you can hop in and assess yourself, see where you are. So let's see how far up in the chat I can go back. Always appreciate you. Steampunk, so good to see you. Professor Periwinkle, whose book is this? I will post that. It's up in the description. It is called the Sandman Tales, and Professor Periwinkle, I will post it in the description and have it posted in the description for tomorrow as well, or for Tuesday's reading as well. So you can find the book of just different fairy tales and stories. I love reading them. I love reading all about them. So thank you, Professor Periwinkle, just for you. And I will be sure to tag you when I get it set for you, okay? Marwa, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Good night, Grandma. Modeled paper. Thank you for coming in and visiting. Appreciate it. Be sure you like, comment, subscribe, and anybody that Nicholas Sparks. Yeah, so that kind of covered our chat. Actually, I can tell you right now who wrote the book. Well, I got to tell you, blue is definitely a color for anti-wrinkles. Let me pull it back up real quick, and I'm going to get that information. I will be sure to tag it. It is The Sandman Tales. It is Bedtime's First Story by Abbie Phillips Walker. It was written published in 1917. And I will put the cliff note, the whole shmush. What do they call it? The note behind it. So it's called The Sandman Tale by Abbie Phillips Walker. And next time, that's a great point. Anything you guys can come up with that you think might help or improve, just let me know. I'm always open for suggestions. So Tuesday when I'm reading, I will definitely, between chapters, between stories, add in the name of the book and the authors and get them in the descriptions. So once again, thank you all for spending an hour with me reading bedtime stories. Hope everybody has a fabulous rest so we can have another fabulously nutty week. Tomorrow we start it over. So from my family to your family, just stay nutty, right? Alrighty, guys, good night.